This episode, we're going to go over the SZ Do It Smart Tank Chassis. And it says for Arduino, but we're going to actually be using a Raspberry Pi later on. So, let's see what this contains. So we have our instruction sheet. All kinds of little parts, Allen wrenches, bolts. We have some of our wheel assembly. More pieces of wheel assembly. Some of our cog pieces, because this is going to be a tank. We have a 2 AA battery holder, and it also looks like there's some little jumper cables in here we'll be able to use later on. And right here we have our 2 DC motors. Open these up. Don't want to mess up any of the leads off these motors. Alright. As you can see there's one of our DC motors. And it just says it's a DC motor, 12 volt, 350 RPMs. So it's a pretty good size motor. Little over an inch in width. About 2 inches long. So there's 2 of these in here. Find the next one. It's wrapped up pretty good. And there's our second one. You can actually see this one actually has the leads are already bent on this one, and I didn't do that. It came that way, but if you can see from there, the one on this side actually has the straight leads off of it. This one on this side has the bent leads. So set these aside. This is actually our chassis. You can see within this one, chassis is wrapped up pretty nice in this kind of like foam plasticky thing, and that's actually a metal chassis. Pretty thick metal, and like these ears, those are pretty hard to bend. Not even really bending them, putting a lot of force into them. So that's a pretty sturdy chassis. I kind of half surprised that it wasn't plastic. I was thinking it was plastic based off of the link on Amazon. But you can see here it's actually metal, which is a pretty good surprise. You can see we have all kinds of pre-drilled places to put our motor, to put our cogs and everything, and then there's a lot of mounting options here on the top, which later on we'll be putting a Raspberry Pi. We'll have to figure out how to get that on there without risking the Raspberry Pi to be shorted out in any case. But the battery module will just bolt in. You can see there's 2 bolt holes right here. More than likely it's going to go right through here, but we'll find out through the instructions. And then the final set is the actual tank tracks. So these are already put together. Glad I didn't have to put these together myself. Similar to what a Lego tank track is you have to snap each one individually, but these are actually already snapped together, which are pretty good. There's 2 of these in this box, and in this case, I believe there's just a metal pin. See if I can bend it just right. They're pretty rigid. I mean, the whole thing itself, you can see, it's pretty nice. But there's a metal pin that kind of runs down through that actually connects each of these together. So it's not anything where it's like plastic clasped together or anything like that. You might be able to see the shine right down through there. There's going to be a metal pin. It's going to hold each one of these little pieces of the track together. So that's what we have. Nothing else in the box. So the instructions, just be prepared, are pretty sparse on here. It's essentially a parts list, the completed structure itself. Little tank tracks on the mount with the battery, and you can see there's one of the motors there. The other motor's actually on this corner, so they're on opposite ends of the chassis on opposite sides. The part list itself, make sure we have everything intact. The instructions, there's half a page on the front, and on the back there's about 3/4 of the page, and it tells you specifically to go to their website to download the full PDF for assembly. So, what is specific telling us? With the wheel assembly, you have more of the smooth side. You'll take them apart. So, place these together. Take your longer M4 nut, feed it all the way through. And once it's in, you just take your standard nut to lock it in place. So, this is really small. You can take your time. There we go, completely tightened. So we're going to repeat this for the second one. Now we have our chassis. There's all kinds of different holes to be here, but what we're looking for are these specific grouping, not the larger set, but the smaller set that should have one large hole, a medium hole, and 2 smaller holes. So that's the one we're going to be worried about. So in this case, take a washer, place it in, place this bolt all the way through, take a secondary washer, the other side, flip it around, and finish it off with the nut. And it says that keep it a little loose. We're going to find out how loose after we get it fully assembled. Get the same. Keep it loose. Now, I'm actually going to migrate over to the motor. Grab one of your motors. Specifically, there's 3 places that we're going to be putting screws in. So, either side doesn't really matter. Orientation doesn't really matter in that case. It's just going to go one way. Till at that point, you see that all 3 holes line up. I mentioned before, gotta be careful about losing some of these small pieces. In my case, I have everything on this dry erase board that has a lip all the way around, so it's not able to actually slide off. Just had 2 of those little lock screws slide around. That little guy, that little guy. And tighten these down. I'm going to move over to the other one. And right there. Oops. Something has like a slide over there. So So now we're going to work off of, we have our non-wheel drive, these two wheels, but when we have our motors installed, now we're going to work on our actual wheel drive, and these will be the ones with the sprockets. So there are two different sets of sprockets. You have your closed sprocket and you have your open sprocket. So what we're going to do is we're going to do one of each. So in this case, they go together. They actually have like little tabs that'll connect into these holes. So just work them together till they squish together and there's no spacing within there. So the open side of the sprocket is going to be facing out of the chassis. The inner chassis will be this closed part of the sprocket. I'm going to be using that here in a little bit. Specifically, we're going to take our motor attachment, and it has a little chunk taken off of here, off of the actual spindle. So this is going to feed into that section right there, so make sure it just lines right up. You can see we're lined up there. However, the problem now is nothing's connecting it. That's where, set this down, using one of these specific bolts. It's going to take a smaller Allen wrench. Right down the middle. Just tighten it. Not too much, because these sprockets are actually plastic, whereas your spindle connection's metal. So tighten it down some. And set it aside. Do the same with the other one. Again, make sure your tabs line up. Push tight. Here we go. Again, a solid spindle or a solid cog. We'll connect to the chassis. There we go. And you don't want too much because it's actually plastic as well, so you can potentially crack that. There we go. We have those two cogs done. Now at this point we're going to attach one to the motor, and as you can see there's no actual section in there. The motor itself, on the shaft, it has a little slice taken out of it. That's where we're going to have the screw pushed against it. So go ahead and use the smallest Allen wrench with your motor locks. And we're going to go ahead and start this guy in. Just enough. Be careful not to strip this guy, because once you get him going, he should be really smooth. So just progress him down through where he's just barely coming through the inner part of that sleeve. Line him up. And then we're going to finish tightening them down. It's easy. I only did like a quarter turn at that point, but it's locked in. Alright. Now we're looking a little bit better. So as you can see, we are way too large on this. A lot of slack built into there. So what we're going to do is we're going to take one of these out, and then we're going to reduce the number of pieces of tread in this.
One eternity later.
End up taking 3 sections of track out. As you can notice, I have a makeshift band-aid. As doing this, the only thing I could find was a nail to go through this small little place where the shaft of the track actually goes through to connect the pieces together. In doing so, I wasn't really practicing safety and ran the nail through my finger. So anyway, this took about 15 minutes to get 3 sections of track out of each one of these and put it back together. So I already did this side. This side's already had 3 removed. You can see there's still a lot of slack, but we'll work on that. Real quick trick on this. If you see I have this loosened, so our non-motor wheel is actually nice and loose. This will help out when we go to this. The next step is, if you can see down the track, you have the open slots through here. This is actually for your gear spindle. Will actually feed right on this. So. There we go. Okay. Tighten this back. As we see here, our solid wheel right here is right on the outside edge of your tank track. And then the actual sprocket is also on the outside edge. And you can see right through here, if you follow the teeth, they line right up. And the inner teeth line right up in that whole part right here. So on this side, and again, loosen it. So we got both sets done. Flip back over where it belongs. So at that point, we have the main chassis done. We have the tracks on, attached to both motors. However, neither one of our motors are actually set up. There we go.